Part 46. I Can See the Laws of Things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 451. The rich purple gold sword had been waiting in the sky for a long time. Seeing the fireman rolling, Lin An couldn't help but think, and then violent space fluctuations suddenly spread out. Swish, swish, swish. The fierce sound of breaking through the air suddenly sounded, and the purple gold swords in the sky suddenly disappeared. When they appeared again, they were already in front of the fireman. This move is named the Time and Space Sword. Lin An's eyes flashed and murmured. Under the purple gold swords that penetrated all directions, the magma man had no place to dodge. Even if he subconsciously spread a light film from his body in danger, he still couldn't change the fate of being pierced by countless purple gold swords. At this moment, countless purple gold swords pierced, and the magma man turned into a big hedgehog. What followed was an extremely violent explosion. The whole body of the magma man exploded. A sea of fire spread under the strong shock wave, and the scorching heat rose in an instant. Lin An's purple gold swords could not withstand it and melted. Fortunately, Lin An had been on guard against such means. At this moment, he retreated thousands of meters again at a very long distance. The spreading sea of fire did not affect Lin An at all. Looking at the mess, Lin An was silent for a moment, and then a black gold light film appeared on his body, and then the whole person sank into the ground. This trip was really full of twists and turns, and Lin An had lost some patience. At present, he didn't even see the shadow of the origin of the earth. Lin An had to speed up. At this time, under the protection of the collapsed light curtain, Lin An's speed was extremely fast, and even applied the law of speed, making him look like a stream of light, flashing away. This kind of progress lasted for a long, long time. After about half a day, Lin An suddenly stopped and looked forward with a little vigilance in his eyes. I saw that the rock layer in front of me suddenly appeared an area like a fault. The whole rock stopped here, and the area bordering it was a misty fog. This white area did look like a mist, but as Lin An approached, the perception over there became clearer and clearer. What kind of fog is this? How could there be fog in this infinitely deep underground place? That was clearly the manifestation of the endless spiritual energy being extremely rich. Lin An's body flew out of the rock layer in an instant and fell directly into the endless whiteness. Lin An found that there was really no rock layer here, but an empty space. The thoughts scattered, and the perception of this place was suppressed to a terrifying degree. With Lin An's current level, it could only cover a kilometer range. Within 1,000 meters, every detail was clearly visible. All that could be sensed was that there was nothing else except the endless spiritual energy. The richness of this spiritual energy was simply a bit shocking. Lin An even had the urge to sit down and meditate. However, Lin An still suppressed his inner thoughts and was a little wary of this place. With such vigilance, Lin An began to move forward slowly, getting farther and farther away from the rock layer behind him, and soon exceeded the range of 1,000 meters. As Lin An began to go deeper, his perception finally became completely empty. There was nothing within 1,000 meters. However, as he went deeper, Lin An could sense that there was a trace of throbbing deep in his heart. He was an ancient, and he had a sense of danger in his heart. At this moment, when he had such a state of mind, Lin An naturally knew the reason. In this white space, there must be other existences. It is really possible that the origin of the earth is here. Even if it is not the origin of the earth, it is not too far from the origin of the earth. This rich spiritual energy is the best proof of being close to him. This kind of progress lasted for about half an hour. When in such a place, the body will automatically absorb spiritual energy, which makes Lin An feel comfortable all over, and even his cultivation has become slightly refined. At this moment, Lin An suddenly fixed his eyes and looked in one direction. There, something broke into his perception. In Lin An's perception, the size of that thing is extremely huge, like a long snake, deep into Lin En's perception for hundreds of meters, and its length has not yet reached the end. I'm afraid it's a real dragon, or a giant dragon. Lin En's eyelids twitched unconsciously, and his mouth became dry subconsciously. As Lin En looked, in Lin En's sight, a vague shadow began to appear in the white area. Just the head was as big as a house. In Lin En's perception, the body of this behemoth has not reached the end. Obviously, its length is more than a kilometer. As it got closer, its appearance gradually began to appear in Lin En's eyes. It turned out to be a dragon head. This dragon seemed to be shining with golden color all over its body. The extremely strong dragon power emanated from it, which made Lin En's heart heavier. Unlike the small beast that looked like a ground dragon before, the huge creature in front of him was a real golden dragon. Human. You dare to break into this land, you can't stay. The rumbling sound seemed to echo in the depths of the void. The big mouth that opened was right in front of him, but Lin En had an illusion that the sound came from the endless void. And the moment he heard his voice, Lin En's eyes lit up. Being able to speak means being able to communicate. Seeing the dragon head approaching, Lin En immediately said, "Wait. This emperor is here to find the origin of the earth, and I accidentally broke into this place." The dragon laughed when he heard it, and it seemed to be filled with strong sarcasm. "This emperor? You, a small human, dare to claim to be an emperor?" The big mouth moved slightly, and the dragon's huge golden pupils revealed a strong disdain, as if it had heard a big joke. "You can come here, I think you have already dealt with those little guys outside. If you know when to advance and retreat, you should not step into this core area. Now that you are here, don't even think about leaving. This land does not need humans to know." Amid the rumbling sound, the dragon spoke in a serious manner, as if what he said was a matter of course. In just a few words, he had already arranged Lin En's ending. As the dragon's words fell, a strong dragon power began to rise here. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 452. The rich dragon power, like the power of heaven, spread over an unknown number of miles in an instant, causing even the air to become slightly distorted. Lin En, who was inside it, felt the ubiquitous and huge pressure almost instantly. It was hard to imagine how much pressure it was. Even he, who was eternal, felt a little difficult under this pressure. Even standing up takes a lot of effort. However, at this moment, Lin En's expression became calmer, and there was an indifference in his eyes that had not appeared for a long time. "This emperor gave you a chance, but you are so ignorant. We are both eternals, but you are so arrogant and arrogant. I have never seen someone as ignorant as you. I have been fighting and fighting for many years, but I have never tried what it feels like to slay a dragon. Today I can give it a try." When he spoke calmly, Lin En's aura suddenly began to rise. And in the sky and on the ground, there is a purple gold and black gold light curtain that spreads for countless thousands of miles in an instant, and it is a world. As the world spread, Lin En's perception recovered instantly, and he could clearly sense the entire golden dragon. This is a huge dragon nearly 3,000 meters long. Sensing such a size, even Lin En couldn't help but take a breath. What kind of existence is this dragon? It is simply a monster. After hearing Lin En's words, the golden dragon couldn't help but laugh even more wildly. Ants are just ants. They always want to compete with the bright moon. This is the so-called fearlessness of the ignorant. The giant dragon's eyes glanced towards the sky, looking at the purple gold dome spreading out. The dragon's eyes fluctuated slightly, with a little surprise. "You do have some tricks up your sleeve. This kind of fluctuation can actually appear on a mere human being." Lin En's face was expressionless, as if he couldn't hear the dragon's words at all. At this moment, there was a strong murderous intention churning deep in his heart. This giant dragon is so arrogant that Lin An has really opened his eyes. He will definitely kill it here today. At this moment, Lin An raised his hand and waved, and suddenly a huge vortex began to condense on the purple gold light curtain above the sky. The size of this whirlpool is simply unimaginable. It actually covers the entire Xigen dome. As far as the eye can see, it is within the scope of that huge whirlpool. As the vortex grew larger and larger, a purple gold light pillar suddenly erupted downwards, but it did not go towards the dragon, but instantly submerged into Lin An's body. From this scene, it seemed as if Lin An was connected to the entire sky. The heavens and the heavens impose upon me. Lin An's figure slowly floated up, and the fluctuations in his body rose to an extremely terrifying level in an instant. You are just a reptile, but you are worthy of speaking nonsense and barking in front of this emperor. Lin An's eyes were full of indifference. When he spoke now, his voice also rumbled and echoed, as if it was transmitted into the depths of the void, causing the space to start to vibrate slightly. Under such momentum, Lin An waved his hand casually, and a purple gold slash flew along Lin An's arm. The slash was only a few meters in size when it was first released, but it began to rise in the wind as it flew out, and in an instant it expanded dozens of times. And when the slash reached the giant dragon, it suddenly formed a huge slash that was 1,000 meters long. The giant dragon could not help but put away his contempt at this moment. Regardless of anything else, just the rising aura from Lin An's body made him have to take it seriously. Lin An's aura was so intense that even he was frightened. Seeing the attack coming, the giant dragon opened its mouth and a dragon's breath emerged. The terrifying golden dragon flames spurted out, forming a fierce storm and roared. Under the impact of this dragon flame, although the Xigen slash was extremely powerful, it was forced to stop bit by bit at this moment, and its power was also rapidly reduced. Lin An's eyes flickered with light, and the rich multi-attribute laws filled the air with fluctuations, and then his figure disappeared in an instant. At this moment, Lin An once again showed off his terrifying movement skills. When he appeared again, he was already in front of the giant dragon's huge head. When he raised his hand, a rich black gold light appeared. At this moment, when Lin An arrived, the giant dragon's huge eyes couldn't help but shrink, and suddenly stared at Lin An's figure. Under the reflection of the huge figure in long Muo, Lin An's raised hand was suddenly covered with black gold light, and it began to rise against the storm in an instant, but the time it took for one breath to reach hundreds of meters. So huge. This huge palm was filled with a rich black gold brilliance, as if it had really turned into a physical entity. And as the huge palm lifted into the sky, a look of violence emerged in Lin An's eyes. My special code makes you proud. A loud and violent shout suddenly sounded out, like thunder exploding, bursting out here. What followed was Lin An's exaggeratedly huge hand, which fell from the sky and slapped the dragon on the head. Boom! An extremely manic explosion sounded immediately, and Lin An's huge slap suddenly hit the dragon's head directly. In the unparalleled aura of collapse, there was unimaginable power, and it instantly hit the dragon's head. It formed an extremely terrifying impact. It can be seen that the giant dragon's body, which was 3,000 meters long, suddenly flew up at this moment, while the giant dragon's big head was directly shot down by Lin An. From this point of view, it was like Lin An's big slap. The slap made the giant dragon's 3,000-meter body turn somersault. The appearance of the scene really has an unimaginable visual impact. As for the giant dragon, its upper body was sinking and its lower body was rising up. Its entire huge body seemed to have lost control. The huge dragon eyes on its head were filled with a bit of confusion. Who am I? Where am I? I am a golden dragon. Was I slapped away? At this moment, the huge dragon's head was still slapped violently by Lin An, and his big head was buzzing. However, Lin An also noticed that there were not many injuries on the big head, it was just some damage on the dragon scales. Obviously, Even though Lin An used Honkai's power, he still didn't cause much damage to the dragon. But is this important? At this moment, Lin An's eyes were filled with intense excitement. Of course it didn't matter how much he was hurt, what mattered was that he felt good. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 453. Thinking of the dragon's arrogant attitude, Lin An's heart was filled with strong anger. In all these years, Lin An had never been despised like this before. At this moment, seeing the dragon's head being slapped, Lin An's body was full of strong law fluctuations. The three laws of time, speed, and space were added simultaneously, allowing Lin An to transfer again, and in an instant he appeared in front of the dragon's head below. Without any hesitation, Lin An raised his hand again, and a strong black and gold light emerged, and then it rose from the wind to several hundred meters. Call another one and see. A deafening voice exploded. Lin An was full of momentum and divine power, and he slapped again. With a loud bang, a strong explosion sounded again from the dragon's head. Then, it could be seen that the dragon's head was blown thousands of meters away by Lin An again. Lin An saw the huge body rolling violently, and he felt relieved. At this time, a golden light appeared in the two pale golden pupils of the huge dragon head. At the same time as the golden light shone, a dragon roar filled with endless anger and frustration came from the big mouth. Asshole! I am a golden dragon. How dare you, a little human, offend me? Damn it! The huge body stabilized itself forcibly, and the dragon shouted loudly immediately. The voice was full of strong majesty, causing some vibrations in the space. However, Lin An suddenly flashed again, and another huge slap suddenly rose from the huge empty eyes of the dragon. How dare you yell here? At the same time as the roar, Lin An slapped out again. As soon as the dragon's eyes showed anger, the slap had already been slapped down. Boom! With a loud bang, the huge dragon's head was suddenly slapped down 1,000 meters, and the huge body was unbalanced and flew up again. However, this time, the dragon was no longer dizzy with the golden light in his eyes, but this made his humiliation rise to a higher level in an instant. Ah! A huge dragon roar resounded, and a golden light film spread out in an instant, spreading 10,000 meters from the dragon's body in an instant. Lin An had a little smile in his eyes, and his mood was much better at the moment. Seeing the light film spreading, Lin An immediately flashed and fled thousands of miles away in an instant. The specific function of the golden light film could not be seen, but this thing was emitted by the dragon in anger, and it must not be a good thing. Only a fool would choose to fight hard. As Lin An fled, the dragon finally had time to stabilize its body, and its huge body immediately began to fly up. What kind of scene is it for a huge body of 3,000 meters to fly up? The clouds hanging from the sky are just like this. And the golden dragon, with its body winding, was surprisingly fast, and it also showed strong flexibility, and rushed towards Lin An in the distance. Asshole! This dragon will kill you today. As the dragon flew fast, the dragon's mouth opened, and suddenly a huge dragon breath sprayed out. Lin An couldn't help but move his eyes slightly, and a thought flashed through his mind in an instant. Can't fight hard. The range of the dragon's breath was extremely large, and it spread out a huge range of thousands of meters in an instant like a roaring sea of fire. In the golden dragon flame, there was a wave of agricultural destruction. This thing is not easy to take. Moreover, the dragon was flying and spraying at the same time. Even if it was blocked, the big head that followed would rush over. Being hit by this thing, that feeling. With a flash of his figure, a strong multi-attribute law fluctuation emerged. Lin An's figure flashed and suddenly appeared above the dragon. When he raised his hand, A purple-gold longsword emerged. At this moment, the purple-gold brilliance spewed out by the purple-gold vortex in the sky was connected to Lin An's body at all times, so Lin An's actions at this moment were also extremely fast, and the intensity was even more terrifying. In an instant, just an instant, the longsword suddenly exploded into a supergiant sword of 1,000 meters, and it fell from the sky and stabbed down at the dragon's body below. However, at this moment, the dragon roared, and its body suddenly twisted, and the huge dragon tail slammed over. The extremely strong sound of breaking through the air sounded, and Lin An's heart suddenly jumped, and in an instant he moved through space to dodge. Just when Lin An disappeared, the huge dragon tail came over at an unimaginable speed. Snap! Amidst the huge whipping sound, the 1,000-meter giant sword that Lin An had just condensed was hit by the dragon tail before it could descend much distance, and it was directly broken into 8 petals. In the distance, Lin An's heart was beating wildly. Seeing the end of the giant sword, he couldn't help but feel lingering fear in his heart. At this moment, his eyes gradually became cold. Hollow, endless field. With a slightly indifferent voice, Lin An raised his hand and waved it downwards, and suddenly the black and gold light curtain under his feet began to surge strongly. It was the black and gold light curtain of the world. The unparalleled collapse aura began to rise above the light curtain, and a series of light spots suddenly condensed from the light curtain. When they appeared, they were light spots, but in the next moment, those light spots instantly spread into 1,000-meter discs. The number of discs was extremely large, and the intervals between each disc were not very large, so it looked densely packed. However, the next moment, what was even more terrifying was that the black gold disc suddenly began to surge, forming a 1,000-meter long pillar, which began to rise rapidly. What was even more terrifying was that the tips of the pillars were actually sharp cones. At this moment, the rise of these black gold light pillars suddenly filled the place with endless collapse fluctuations, and under the spread of this collapse aura, the endless pillars began to rise rapidly. From a distance, it seemed like endless supergiant arrows were rising. In the distance, the giant dragon had naturally sensed the changes below a long time ago, and at this moment, there was a deep shock in the huge dragon eyes. He felt that the supergiant arrows below were all collapse arrows composed of collapse. If it was the power of the law, it would be easier to say, but this collapse arrow was nothing short of a great terror. Ayo! The extremely high-pitched dragon roar began to resound, and the golden light in the giant dragon's eyes suddenly became countless times stronger, and the dragon power emanating from its body also increased several times at this moment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 454. As the fierce dragon power rose, the extremely terrifying pressure also spread in an instant. The countless black gold giant arrows below were actually all under the spread of the pressure, and the speed of their rise began to slow down. At this moment, the giant dragon suddenly turned its body, and the huge dragon head faced downwards, and opened its mouth to spit out a huge dragon breath. The fierce dragon flame spread over a very wide range, and there was a strong wave of destruction spreading in it. Under such circumstances, it was the bottom of the giant dragon that first produced a strong collision. The terrifying dragon breath directly touched the black gold giant arrow, but strangely there was not much sound, but Lin An saw that the sharp tip of the black gold giant arrow disappeared in an instant. However, the black gold giant arrow extended from the bottom, and at this moment it seemed endless. Even if the dragon flame burned, it continued to rise. In this case, a fierce war of attrition was formed on that side. However, at this moment, the giant arrows in other ranges have already climbed to a very high height. After these giant arrows rose to a certain height, the direction of extension began to change, and they gathered towards a certain place in the sky above the giant dragon. In an instant, a scene like the return of thousands of swords appeared here. The giant dragon's huge dragon eyes fluctuated slightly, and suddenly felt something was wrong. This endless force field is not just these effects. While the giant dragon was worried, the point above the sky that gathered together began to shoot down rapidly. This point was formed by countless black and gold giant arrows gathered together, so the speed of extension was also terrifying, like lightning, and it approached in an instant. This scene seemed to crush the whole world, and there was nothing to hide in the sky and the ground. At the critical moment, a golden light film instantly spread out from the dragon's body, forming a sphere that wrapped the entire body of the dragon. This time, there was a loud explosion. Amid the loud noise, the black gold giant arrow shot directly onto the light curtain, and the tip of the arrow melted away in an instant. However, the giant arrow was endless and began to bombard the light film continuously. In just 2 seconds, cracks suddenly appeared on the light curtain. At this moment, a violent golden light suddenly emerged from the dragon's body. Lin En saw that every dragon scale on the dragon's body was shining with golden light. And the next second, the dragon's figure began to expand again, but in a blink of an eye, Lin En couldn't help but condense his eyes. No. It's not that the dragon is expanding, but a phantom that is exactly the same as him spreads from the dragon's body, like an enlarged version of the golden dragon. As the golden light curtain was completely broken, the phantom of the dragon spread out in an instant, but it just completely covered him. In the same way, as soon as the endless black gold giant arrows broke through the light curtain, they were blocked by the golden phantom again, and they were actually blocked. However, even if it was blocked, Lin En could see at a glance that it was just a temporary hold. Under the collapse, what can persist? Nothing. Not too long after, the phantom of the giant dragon began to tremble slightly. The giant dragon roared and stopped breathing directly. Instead, a rich golden light began to emerge from the whole body, and quickly gathered on the surrounding phantom. Without the obstruction of the dragon flame, the black gold giant arrows under the giant dragon immediately began to attack the phantom above. For a time, the sky and the ground were surrounded by enemies. However, with the full participation of the giant dragon, the constantly gushing golden light made the phantom glow with strong colors again. Even though Lin En was bombarded from the sky and the ground at the same time, there was no sign of defeat. Lin En couldn't help but frown slightly. How come this golden dragon is like a turtle shell? It can't be broken. Glancing at the golden dragon struggling to support, Lin En said lightly, "It's still a golden dragon, but it's just a turtle bastard, it can only hide in the turtle shell and survive." Hearing Lin En's voice, the golden dragon roared in exasperation. "Shameless villain! This dragon will definitely kill you today. Let's see how long you can hold on with this attack." Lin En couldn't help but smile lightly. "Old turtle. Do you know that this emperor's offensive is a killing force, an endless force field? Do you know the meaning of the word endless?" The golden dragon sneered. "Endless? Ignorant human. There is nothing in the world that can be called endless." Lin En didn't care at all at this moment. "I don't know if it's really endless, but I know that this force field is enough to support you until you die of exhaustion. On the contrary, you, old turtle, are now you dare to hide in your broken tortoise shell, but you still have time to mock me." The golden dragon was speechless, but then he spoke again. "You are just a human, you can only show off your verbal skills. If you have the ability, come and break through my defense." Lin En's eyes flashed with anger. "Old thing. Do you think I can't do anything to you? You are looking for death." The golden dragon laughed at this moment. "Come on. It's not easy for you to maintain this force field now, I want to see what tricks you can play." Lin En's eyes suddenly flashed with a bit of coldness, and without any nonsense, he immediately raised his hand and waved. The purple gold light gathered on Lin En's body above the sky, making everything he had at the moment upgrade to several levels. At this moment, with a casual wave of his hand, a purple gold light ball immediately emerged. This light ball did not look big, only half a meter in size, and it looked even worse than an ant compared to the giant dragon's huge body of 3,000 meters. However, Lin En was staring at the ball with a burning gaze at the moment, with a strong persistence flashing in his eyes, and even some muttering could be heard. Explosion. Explosion law. Maximum, added to the maximum for me, crazy addition. On the purple gold light ball, the purple gold light seemed to be even more intense. Almost an incense stick of time passed, and Lin En still had no intention of taking action. The giant dragon not far away saw that Lin En had not moved for a long time, and couldn't help laughing at this moment. How can a mere ant really rebel against the heavens? You have been hesitating for so long, but you still can't even fart. You humans are only good at talking big, always fantasizing about unreal things. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 455. Lin En seemed to have turned a deaf ear to the dragon's words, and continued to stare at the light ball with burning eyes. Anyway, the infinite force field was suppressing the dragon now, and Lin En was not afraid of any tricks from the other party. And time passed little by little. It's almost there, it's almost there. At a certain moment, Lin En's head-lowering movement suddenly moved, and it can be seen that there were even some bloodshot in Lin En's eyes. However, if you look closely, you can find that Lin En's eyes staring at the golden dragon at this moment are full of excitement. Old turtle. The surprise you want is here. As he spoke, Lin En raised his hand and waved, and suddenly violent space fluctuations spread out, and the half-meter light ball in front of Lin En disappeared almost instantly. The next second, the light ball had crossed countless distances and directly passed through the space, passing the phantom of the dragon and appeared directly in front of the dragon, and flew towards the dragon. This small ball of light, apart from the rich purple-gold brilliance, seemed to have nothing to show. However, at this moment, the golden dragon suddenly felt a strong sense of fear in his heart, and even the dragon scales on his body stood up. Without the slightest hesitation, the dragon opened his mouth and sprayed out a dragon breath, directly rushing towards the ball of light. And the moment the dragon breath touched the ball of light, it exploded in the golden dragon's shrinking pupils. Boom! The unimaginable explosion sounded, as if the whole earth was about to explode. Lin En was thousands of meters away, and his ears were buzzing at this moment. On the golden dragon's side, an unparalleled violent impact spread from the place where the ball of light exploded. At this moment, the air was violently twisted, and the terrifying shock wave, wrapped in countless chaotic law turbulence, spread towards the dragon. In an instant, this impact was forced against the dragon flame and hit the face of the golden dragon directly. Ah! The horrified dragon roar sounded, but it was completely drowned out by the roar, and the terrifying shock wave also covered the huge body of the golden dragon in an instant. Bang! The second sound that followed was heard in succession. Lin En couldn't help but look and saw that the huge dragon phantom was also hit by the shock wave. It was directly bulged in an instant and the whole thing was blown up. Even after the phantom of the dragon was blown up, the terrifying shock wave actually directly produced a terrifying impact on the black gold arrows in the sky and on the ground, and forcibly cleared everything within a radius of 1 kilometer. In the center of the huge hole, the figure of the dragon emerged. At this moment, it was already covered in blood. The flesh of the huge dragon head and the big mouth had disappeared, and what was left was the bloody bones. In the dragon's eyes, one eye was already a bloody mess, and the other one was also bloodshot. Looking around, blood was everywhere, and the huge body of 3,000 meters long was now bloody all over. The golden dragon had become a bloody dragon. Lin En secretly smacked his lips, and it took him a long time to come back to his senses. At this moment, he immediately cast the law of life to cover his ears, and then he felt much better. Just now, there was a buzzing in his ears, and he was almost deaf-end. Seeing the miserable appearance of the golden dragon, Lin En couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. This thing must be kept away from him in the future, otherwise, not to mention others, he himself will be in trouble. Old Turtle. How do you feel? Is it still sour and refreshing? Lin An's voice was full of a feeling of asking for a beating, but at this moment, the dragon's eyes were dull, and the whole dragon was motionless, as if it was stunned. Lin An couldn't help but wonder, what's wrong with this guy? Lin An couldn't help but get closer, and the golden dragon seemed to feel the approach of Lin An's breath, and turned his head subconsciously. When he saw Lin An approaching, the huge body actually retreated hundreds of meters in an instant. Lin An couldn't help but be stunned, and then he couldn't help but laugh and cry. I said, Old Turtle, you insisted on provoking me to hit you, why are you afraid now? The golden dragon looked at Lin An vigilantly, as if he didn't hear Lin An's words. Lin An was surprised for a moment, and then he understood. This dragon must still have buzzing ears now. Lin An was thousands of meters away, and his ears were buzzing and he was almost deaf-end. And the dragon, the light ball almost exploded on his face, he was not deaf already. Even the dragon's head was still there. Lin An felt quite incredible, this guy, this body is so strong that it's not human. It's worthy of being a dragon, it's really not something humans can imagine. At this moment, the golden dragon retreated hundreds of meters in an instant, and Lin An lost interest. Forget it. It's time to stop playing and get down to business. Lin An spoke lightly, as if sighing secretly, and then raised his hand and waved. Instantly, the black and golden arrows that had not disappeared in the sky and on the ground began to rise again, rushing towards the golden dragon at lightning speed. And Lin An waved his hand again, and another extremely rich law fluctuation emerged. Time and space confinement. The incomparable laws of time and space began to rise rapidly, and the mysterious fluctuations instantly enveloped the golden dragon hundreds of meters away. This time and space confinement has many requirements. It is usually very difficult for people of the same level to perform it. The opponent's cultivation power is enough to break free from this confinement. However, the golden dragon at this moment is already wounded and exhausted, so Lin An naturally has no such concerns. Therefore, under such circumstances, the golden dragon on the opposite side was instantly enveloped by a mysterious aura. In an instant, that space, whether time or space, solidified at the same time and fell into absolute stillness. And those black and gold giant arrows in the sky and underground, just like this, directly enveloped the golden dragon's whole body. Turning slightly, Lin An turned his head away, not to witness the scene of blood spilling on the world, but to move in the original direction. He is going to find the origin of the earth. This time going underground, Lin An has experienced so many battles, big and small. If he can't find it again, he will collapse. Behind him, a strong wave of destruction permeated, dissipating the last breath of the golden dragon. Along with it, the endless light curtain in the sky and on the ground also dissipated. This area of the world returned to peace, and everything seemed as if nothing had happened. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 456. Lin An moved forward very quickly. Before, Lin An's speed was restrained because of the warning in his heart, which made Lin An alert. But now, the warning in his heart has completely dissipated, and there is no longer any sense of danger. In this way, Lin An no longer restrained himself, but opened the fastest speed and rushed forward at lightning speed. After moving forward like this for half an hour, a little blue light suddenly appeared in front of Lin An. Lin An immediately approached quickly, and the blue light began to magnify rapidly in his eyes. Until the blue light looked like 1,000 meters long, Lin An finally rushed to the front of this blue light. In this blue light, Lin An could clearly see the scene in the blue light, which was empty and there was nothing. However, although he could not see anything, Lin An could faintly sense some residual breath. It was a familiar breath. Lin An recalled in an instant that when Lin An came, he was injured and fled. Could it be that the mysterious thing got there first and took away the origin of the earth? Suspicion flashed in Lin An's eyes. There was no doubt that the breath of that figure remained here, and Lin An would never make a mistake. In this case, Lin An could only think of this possibility. Recalling the scene where the blue phantom turned into countless streams of light and dissipated, Lin An couldn't help but feel a little tricky in his heart. The opponent's means were strange. If he faced it, it would not be difficult to defeat it, but if he wanted to prevent the opponent from escaping, he would have to waste a lot of thoughts. After pondering for a moment, Lin An thought about it, and finally turned around and left, rushing in the direction he came from. Along the way, after so many battles, big and small, the origin of the earth was abducted by someone first, and Lin An couldn't help feeling very annoyed in his heart. If I see that guy again, I will definitely make him look bad. Lin An started to speed again. It took a lot of time to stop and go when he came here, but now that he was on the way back, he already knew everything on the road, so he didn't need to control the speed anymore, but was speeding all the way. In this way, it didn't take much time for Lin An to rush out from the bottom of the sea. In the seabed full of fine sand, once Lin An's figure rushed out, his huge thoughts spread out in an instant, and he could see everything around him in an instant. As the situation here appeared, Lin An couldn't help but frown slightly. When Lin An arrived here, although it was not calm, there were not many undercurrents. However, at this moment, the sea water here was simply crazy, with countless waves and undercurrents squeezing wildly. Under the action of this water pressure, the destructive power generated was already extremely terrifying. At a glance, in the place where the undercurrent was surging wildly, there were already countless dead fish and rotten shrimps. Lin An's face sank slightly, and he immediately rose up towards the sea surface above, and then he jumped out of the sea surface with a bang. As Lin An rose into the sky, more information and scenes appeared in front of Lin An, and Lin An couldn't help but take a breath. This sea surface is crazy. At this moment, the only feeling that appeared in Lin An was actually such a feeling. Looking around, there was no place in that sea area that was calm for thousands of miles. All places were counted, and all were huge waves. Lin An even felt that huge waves were not enough to describe the sea surface at this moment. There were huge waves, which were simply a tsunami, thousands of meters high. Thousands of meters of huge waves, how can such a scene be imagined? You know, the planes in Kyushu domain are only flying at an altitude of thousands of meters. This huge tsunami can directly shoot down the planes in the sky. You dare to believe it? In another place, there was an extremely terrifying huge whirlpool, covering a huge area of tens of thousands of miles, as if there was a huge turbine spinning wildly on the seabed. Seeing this scene, Lin An had an impulse to go to the bottom of the sea to see if there was a huge turbine spinning. A whirlpool of thousands of miles. How is this possible? With a strong sense of amazement, Lin An's face was a little heavy, and he raised his hand to disperse the exaggerated waves of thousands of meters in the distance. Then he waved at the huge whirlpool in the distance, and the huge whirlpool also instantly showed great resistance, and the sea surface of thousands of miles was abruptly stagnant. After doing this, Lin An flew towards the land above the sea. Flying all the way from the Arctic Ocean to the east, Lin An's speed was extremely fast, and the whole person turned into a stream of light, bringing a strong sound of breaking through the air. From time to time, Lin An would raise his hand and wave it towards a certain place, sometimes dispersing a tsunami, sometimes smoothing out a whirlpool, and at this speed, the outline of the land soon began to emerge in front of him. As the land approached, Lin An's eyes once again showed a strong shock. What did he see? The land in the distance was actually separated. The land in the distance was suddenly separated into two parts, and in the middle was a huge strait of tens of thousands of meters. The appearance of the scene immediately made Lin An's eyelids jump, because with Lin An's eyesight, looking around, the huge strait could not be seen at a glance. What does this mean? The split of the land is very likely not a corner, but a distance that is unknown, and it is even possible that the entire land is split into two. Putting away the shock in his heart, Lin An flew out again. Looking around, there is a huge mountain rising out of thin air, full of strange rocks, as if it had just risen. There was a strong earthquake in a place under Lin An's induction, and the bottomless super canyon was split. The extent of the earthquake was so strong that the whole earth could see the strong tremor. What's even more strange is that in some places, Lin An saw a lot of plants. Those plants are huge, the trees have grown to hundreds of meters, the weeds on the ground are dozens of meters high, and the petals of the flowers are also several meters huge. How could this thing appear? Lin An's eyes were even more suspicious. Where the huge plant appeared, Lin An felt a very rich spiritual fluctuation. The density of the spiritual energy was simply amazing. These things could not possibly happen naturally. There must be some existence secretly interfering with the earth. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 457. I wonder if it will be like this on other continents. Lin An's figure moved forward quickly, a look of thinking flashed in his eyes. Before entering the interior of the earth to find the origin of the earth, although there were disasters on the earth, they were far from as terrifying as they are now, and those huge plants never appeared at all. At this moment, Lin An thought for a moment, then waved a space crack in front of him, and suddenly got into it. When he reappeared, Lin An's figure suddenly appeared above the promised city. Looking around, Lin An's pupils could not help but shrink slightly. There is no overlap between this place and its original appearance. Not to mention the many pavilions and pavilions of the original Emperor Tiangong and the promised city, even the landforms on the plains have actually changed. A huge mountain range towering into the clouds lies across here. The area of the huge mountain is very huge, covering countless thousands of miles, and it becomes a scene of mountains surrounded. On the huge mountain, there are endless strange stones and fragments, and there are countless scenes of jagged rocks. In the depths of some ravines, you can actually see magma that has not yet dried up. Lin An couldn't help but feel his heart sink. Obviously, this place should have not only experienced the compression of the continental plate, but also showed signs of volcanic eruption. This promised city has completely changed beyond recognition. Lin An couldn't help but feel a little displeasure in his heart. If it were just the plate squeezing caused by the earthquake, that would be it. However, the appearance of magma clearly showed that there were signs of man-made factors here. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occur at the same time. How can there be so many coincidences in the world? With a flash of his body, Lin An sank into the space crack again, and instantly traveled through space to reach the southern Nangzhen city. This place actually has some similarities with the scene of the promised city, and that is a sign of man-made things. The huge crack directly split the entire Nangzhen city into two halves. The crack extended directly into the sea in the distance, causing countless seawater to pour in. But just like that, it seems that it is still not enough. There are deep pits on the ground, and you can even faintly see some ice particles that have not melted completely. These are clearly the traces of a terrifying hailstorm. Lin An waved with a sullen face, and then checked the West Heart City and the North Heart City one after another. The situation was roughly the same. Where each city was located, even the landscape was completely changed beyond recognition, let alone the houses that were originally located in it. With a heavy heart, Lin An arrived at East Heart City in a flash. Lin An had obtained 2 starry sky rough stones here before, so he felt more familiar with this place. As soon as he arrived here, Lin An suddenly felt the extremely strong hurricane between heaven and earth. Lin En immediately looked intently and saw a huge tornado between heaven and earth not far away, directly connecting the sky and the earth. The ground is raging like crazy. And in the mid-air on the other side, there is a light blue shadow, waving its palm towards the tornado, as if controlling the direction of the tornado. As Lin En appeared, the light blue figure immediately turned around and was startled when he saw Lin En. Lin En's face was a little heavy, and he said in a deep voice, "You are responsible for all the disasters on Earth? Why do you do this? Who are you?" Without any words, the light blue shadow controlled the tornado to change direction with a wave of his hand, heading towards Lin En. Lin En's eyes flashed with cold light, the purple gold light flashed, and he raised his hand and waved. With one swing, a purple gold slash roared out, rising in the wind, and in an instant, it formed a huge slash that spanned the sky and the earth. This slash was too big, and a strong wave of destruction emerged from it, roaring towards the huge tornado, and then was directly submerged into the tornado. It can be clearly seen that wherever the slash passes, it seems that the space is being cut open, and nothing can stop it at all. The same is true for the raging tornado. The huge tornado connecting heaven and earth was cut into two halves in a flash, and then began to dissipate. There was displeasure in Lin En's eyes, and when he waved his hand again, a strong spatial fluctuation suddenly appeared. Space barrier. The extremely rich purple gold brilliance emerged instantly, but the location where it emerged was not in front of Lin En, but began to emerge in the area thousands of miles away from the surrounding houses. In the blink of an eye, a purple gold sphere as big as thousands of miles was formed. Lin En and the light blue figure were enveloped together. The strong spatial fluctuations dispersed, and Lin En looked at the light blue shadow again, with a strong murderous intent flashing in his eyes. The last time he encountered this light blue shadow, the other party escaped with that weird method. Now that the space barrier blocked all directions, Lin En wanted to see how the other party could escape. Seeing the purple gold light curtain emerging, the light blue shadow instantly felt the fluctuations in space over there, and understood Lin En's intention in an instant. Lin is preventing him from escaping. Lin wants to kill him. When this thought arose, an extremely strong murderous aura suddenly appeared all over the light blue shadow, and even a hazy light red mist appeared around it. Lin En couldn't help but be surprised. This murderous intention was directed at him. Lin En just blocked this space. Why did the other party react like he had been stepped on? While Lin En was surprised, the pale blue shadow raised his hand and waved it, aiming at Lin En's direction from a distance. Instantly, Lin En's pupils shrank slightly. The huge pressure suddenly squeezed towards Lin En from all directions. Almost in an instant, Lin En found the source of this squeezing force. Air. The air around Lin En actually began to compress inward at a terrifying degree. The huge squeezing force rose to an unimaginable degree in an instant, and even Lin En's complexion began to change slightly. At this moment, sensing the changes around him, Lin En's body immediately showed a strong law fluctuation, and a violent purple gold light lit up. As soon as this light appeared, Lin En immediately felt that the oppression on his body was reduced a lot. The next moment, Lin En's figure disappeared instantly. Under the combination of the laws of time, speed, and space, Lin En's figure was extremely fast, but in an instant he shuttled through space and left the squeezed core. When he appeared again, Lin En had already flashed behind the pale blue shadow. Don't talk. If you don't talk, then prepare to die. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 458. Amidst the roar, a faint glow appeared in Lin En's eyes, and he slapped the pale blue shadow with a palm. This palm was filled with rich black gold brilliance. At this moment, as Lin En's palm was raised, the palm also swelled up instantly, but it only swelled to 3 or 4 meters and then stopped. As the saying goes, there is no need to use a butcher knife to kill a chicken. Facing this small shadow at this moment, Lin En naturally did not need to make a huge palm of hundreds of meters. The speed of this small palm was countless times faster. In almost an instant, Lin En's small palm had already formed and slapped the shadow. In an instant, between lightning and fire, the speed of the pale blue shadow was terrifying. In this thousandth of a second, a light curtain spread out on the body. Boom! Unexpectedly, when Lin En's palm touched the light blue light curtain, it actually made a loud bang, and then cracks began to spread on the light blue light curtain. With such a delay, the light blue shadow had enough time to turn around. Crack! A crisp shattering sound was heard, which was the sound of the light blue light curtain completely exploding. At this moment, the light blue shadow had turned around and greeted the black gold palm with one palm. The scarlet blood was diffused, and the blood-red palm print also swelled up in the wind. In the blink of an eye, it expanded to the same size as the black gold palm print, and then it slammed together. Boom! A strong roar suddenly sounded, and at the center of the collision, a violent shock wave instantly agitated and spread, and the chaotic law fluctuations spread and raged, causing Lin En and the light blue shadow to retreat hundreds of meters. In the center of the collision, there were two palm prints, as if no one could do anything to the other, and both began to collapse, and then completely collapsed. Lin En's eyes flashed with strange light, and he raised his foot slightly, and then stepped down. In an instant, the purple gold and black gold light curtains began to spread in an instant, and it was a world. At this moment, the world truly possessed the power of a world. The purple gold sky curtain seemed infinitely high, and the black gold light curtain seemed to be infinitely thick, and there were deep waves of collapse. As the world unfolded, on the endless sky curtain, a tiny vortex began to rotate. The vortex seemed not to be fast, but it was expanding at an unimaginable speed. In the blink of an eye, it actually covered the entire sky, forming a super purple gold vortex as big as the sky. In the center of the vortex, a purple gold light descended instantly, and it showered on Lin En. For a moment, Lin En's power began to surge. Swish! At this moment, Lin En was full of momentum, and he waved his sleeves casually. In an instant, this waving of sleeves caused an extremely huge super air wave, which instantly whistled towards the ground. Seeing this scene, the face of the light blue shadow suddenly sank. Last time we met, you didn't have this kind of power. Lin En's pupils shrank violently, and there was a little surprise in his eyes. You can talk. After reacting, Lin En immediately recalled that the light blue shadow ignored him before. Suddenly, the surprise in Lin En's eyes was drowned by a violent look, and his eyes became irritable in an instant. It was not just his eyes, but all the aura around Lin En seemed to start rioting instantly. Swish! Lin En waved his hand directly, and a purple gold air wave swung out, and it instantly surged to hundreds of feet in size. Wherever it passed, the air brought up a distorted wave, and the huge power was like overwhelming the sky and the earth, flying madly towards the light blue shadow. After waving his hand, multi-attribute law fluctuations appeared on Lin En's body again, and his figure disappeared in an instant. When he appeared again, he had already come directly behind the light blue shadow. You can talk, but you still pretend to be dumb. This time, this emperor will make you really dumb. With a loud shout, Lin En was so powerful at this moment, as if the entire sky behind him was a foil for him alone. Raise your hand, black gold appears. The rich black gold brilliance was extremely rich at this moment, and the speed of condensation was also extremely terrifying. In the blink of an eye, an extremely huge palm condensed. The big palm seemed to cover the sky and the sun, and it was like the huge air wave on the other side, also reaching hundreds of feet in size. On one side was a huge air wave, and on the other side was a super big slap. The terrifying might began to attack the light blue shadow at this moment. At the critical moment, the reaction speed of the light blue shadow was extremely terrifying. He slightly turned sideways, and waved his hands from top to bottom, and two light blue light curtains emerged. The speed of generation was extremely terrifying. As the light curtain was generated, Lin An's giant palm and the surging air wave directly hit the light curtain. Boom! Under the huge roar, cracks tore from the light curtain, and it was deadlocked for a while before it broke. And taking advantage of this moment, the light blue shadow rose up, flashed through the gap of the light curtain, and flew up abruptly. Boom! The light curtain was broken, and Lin An's giant palm and the air wave collided together, instantly shattering the huge air wave. A cold light flashed in Lin An's eyes, and suddenly a strong law fluctuation appeared around him. Swish! In an instant, the pale blue shadow just rose up and escaped from the gap, and Lin An's figure appeared directly above his body. Still want to run? Where to run? The thick black light condensed again, and another huge palm appeared. The pale blue figure seemed to be angry and shouted, "Lin An! Don't push your luck." Lin An's eyes suddenly became colder, and the aura of collapse in his hand did not decrease at all, but became more concentrated. The extremely concentrated palm of collapse actually slapped the other party at a faster speed. Push your luck? You bastard is destroying the earth, but you let this emperor push his luck. In the crisis, blue light appeared in the pale blue shadow's hand. In a hurry, he had to try his best to condense his strength, and the palm with the thick blue light had to fight upwards. Boom! Under the terrifying roar, the pale blue shadow sank hundreds of feet in an instant, and it was almost about to hit the ground. Lin An raised his hand with great momentum, his palm facing downwards, and immediately an extremely rich purple gold light condensed from Lin An's palm. If you have the courage to wreak havoc in front of this emperor, you must have the courage to face death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 459. After shouting, the purple gold light in Lin An's palm seemed to have condensed to the extreme. In an instant, a purple gold laser suddenly rushed from the sky to the pale blue shadow underground at an unimaginable speed. In a flash, the pale blue shadow actually moved 3 feet sideways in an instant, and the terrifying purple gold laser almost rubbed his body and bombarded past. Boom! The terrifying explosion sounded instantly. The pale blue shadow dodged the bombardment, and the purple gold light column shot directly into the earth, and a terrifying shock wave spread instantly. As the shock wave spread, more violent flames were stirred up, just like a nuclear bombardment. The pale blue shadow not far away was affected almost instantly, and the body was directly hit on the face by the shock wave, and the body flew backwards and moved thousands of meters. Lin An's eyes regained their calmness. Just as he put down his arm, he saw the pale blue shadow suddenly stopped and raised his head to roar at Lin An. Damn it! You humans deserve to die. Why did a race like you appear on Earth? I should have wiped you all out when you first appeared. Lin An was stunned. This sentence seemed to contain some information. After hesitating for a moment, Lin An's eyes showed suspicion. Who are you? The pale blue shadow seemed to be furious. Lin An, you are not qualified to question me. Lin An's eyes suddenly flashed with dissatisfaction. Since there is no way to communicate, this emperor will beat you until you can communicate. While speaking, Lin An's body suddenly had law fluctuations emerging. Asshole, the pale blue shadow roared angrily, and the pale blue fluctuations around him were agitated to the extreme, as if all the power had been condensed. However, if you look closely, you can find that even if this power is condensed to the extreme, there is still a slight gap compared to Lin An. Seeing this, Lin An's eyes became a little calmer. Don't waste your energy, you are not my opponent. I will ask you some questions, just answer them truthfully. The light blue shadow heard this and roared even louder. How dare you? You humans all deserve to die. Damn it! Lin An's patience seemed to be exhausted. He sighed slightly, and then waved his hand forward. Instantly, the purple gold light spread in an instant, as if it began to expand in all directions, and a huge light curtain condensed in an instant. This light curtain was extremely large, and the speed of expansion was even more terrifying. In a blink of an eye, it had condensed into a shape that was almost hemispherical. The light blue shadow trembled slightly, and immediately understood what Lin An meant. Lin An was going to block him. However, before he could make any move, a mysterious wave suddenly spread around him. Wherever the breath passed, everything seemed to be in a strange stillness. Space-time confinement. This confinement came very suddenly, and it enveloped the light blue shadow. The light blue shadow was shocked and screamed, "Time law, you bastard!" Just when the light blue shadow was imprisoned, the super light curtain that covered an infinite range finally closed, forming a huge light ball that enveloped the light blue shadow. The next moment, the huge light ball suddenly retracted. At the extreme speed, in just 2 or 3 breaths, the light ball still shrank countless times, barely wrapping the light blue shadow. Lin An had a chuckle in his eyes. "I said, you are not my opponent. Come on, I have some questions to ask you. First, why destroy the Earth?" "Because you humans deserve to die." Without the slightest pause, the light blue shadow actually roared out. Lin An couldn't help but wonder, "You hate humans so much. Why? How did humans offend you?" "Because of your destruction of the environment, my awakening time has been extended by tens of thousands of years. Especially you modern people, you are simply a disaster." Lin An was even more suspicious. "What does our destruction of the environment have to do with your awakening? Who are you?" The pale blue shadow stopped immediately, and after a moment, he couldn't help but sigh, glanced at the purple gold light ball around, and then spoke as if he had accepted his fate. "I am the origin of the Earth." "What?" Lin An was surprised and came back to his senses after a long time. His mind was racing, and all kinds of thoughts flashed in his mind in an instant, and Lin An's eyes began to have a look of realization. "So, everything seems to make sense. It's just, after meeting him, all those experiences of going infinitely far underground seem to be useless. Because the origin of the Earth is not underground at all." Thinking of this, Lin An couldn't help but get angry. "What are those things underground?" The pale blue shadow paused, and then seemed to understand what Lin An meant. "They are all rare and exotic animals, existing to protect me." Lin An couldn't help but look strange. "That golden dragon is also protecting you?" The pale blue shadow nodded. "That is the closest exotic animal to me. It has existed for who knows how many years, and its strength is almost the same as mine." I'm sorry, your golden dragon was killed by me accidentally." Lin An was silent for a moment, and suddenly touched his head and said. The pale blue shadow twitched his mouth, and then said sadly, "I have guessed that no one knows that place. Since you know it, it means you have been there." Lin An smiled awkwardly and then asked again, "You said your awakening was delayed for tens of thousands of years. What's going on?" The light blue shadow sighed. "You humans destroying the environment will cause a lot of energy loss for me, which is why my awakening time has been prolonged." Lin An raised his eyebrows. "What you mean by awakening is, your current power?" The light blue shadow paused, looked at Lin An and sighed again. "Forget it, my life is in your hands now, it doesn't hurt to tell you these secrets. What I mean by awakening refers to my independent consciousness. A long time ago, I didn't have my own consciousness, all I had was a ball of consciousness. It's just the origin. Then one day, an outsider approached me and wanted to rob me of my power, so I had to start self-awakening. This was also the first time my spiritual energy was revived." Lin was immediately shocked. "You mean, the spiritual energy recovery from the very beginning was caused by you?" The light blue shadow smiled bitterly. "Yes. This is inevitable. But for you, this is not a bad thing. If it weren't for the revival of spiritual energy, how could you have the power you have now? I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 460. Lin An's eyes flickered, as if he was accepting this sudden fact. Is the spiritual energy reviving because the original consciousness of the earth is awakening? This kind of thing sounds incredible. However, the resurrection of spiritual energy itself is incredible, but who is the being who wants to plunder the origin of the earth? It seems that the mysterious being who wanted to rob you must have failed. Who is he? Is he still alive now? Lin An blinked and then said. Earth origin seemed to have deep meaning in his eyes. You know this person, and you have even fought against him several times. Lin An's pupils suddenly shrank. Who is it? The origin of the earth nodded. It's that existence. It's just that he seemed to be seriously injured when he found me. He was only in the early stage of eternity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to withstand it just because I was unconscious at that time. Later on, the several fights you had with him were just his projections. Countless years have passed, and I guess his real strength should be much stronger than you are now. Speaking of this, Earth Origin's voice sounded heavy. Even his cultivation may have surpassed eternity. Above eternity, he is the master. Lin suddenly felt a little heavier. So, once he makes a comeback, no one in the world can beat him. Then why doesn't he come here now? I don't know about this either. Dominance is not so easy. To be able to reach this level, he naturally has his great opportunity. But this is an opportunity, and it is also a constraint. Otherwise, why would he be distracted by projection many times to test it? Lin nodded, finally understanding. After a moment, Lin An sighed. Now that everything has been said, I will no longer embarrass you. First, stop your destruction of the earth. There is no room for negotiation on this point. You are even responsible for restoring the earth that has been turned upside down. The earth is the home of all living things. If you do this, you are really going down the path of this emperor. Second, in the future, do not interfere in the life of the earth, nor in the lives of human beings, and even provide help when necessary. Only when we work together can the earth become a better place. Third, it's that mysterious phantom. This emperor will take care of this matter, so you don't have to worry too much. It's not that I look down on you, but after so many years, you are just an eternal level, counting on you. I don't know how long it will take to break through the dominance. If it is according to what you said, I am indeed no match for the mysterious shadow now, but if it were you, you would be worse than me. If the mysterious shadow comes to me before I break through the master, then everyone will die together. On the contrary, then I will give you, the earth, and everyone the ultimate refuge. Lin An's words were not loud, and they sounded as if they were explaining the funeral affairs. The origin of the earth was silent for a while. After a while, the origin of the earth took a deep breath and said, I understand. Lin An nodded. In that case, I will return to the Kyushu territory first, and I will trouble you to put some effort into the matter of the earth. I hope that when I return, I can see a restored earth as before. Earth Origin turned around. You'll see. Lin An smiled faintly, raised his hand to create a space crack, and stepped into it. Kyushu domain. Lin An's figure emerged. Stepping into this world, Lin An's expression couldn't help but change slightly. He sensed a strange will. This will seemed to have just sprouted, and was still floating a little vaguely, but Lin An was able to confirm at once that this was the feeling of will. How could there be a will that has never been seen before here? Could it be? When Lin An frowned slightly, suddenly space fluctuations appeared in front of him. Lin An looked intently and saw King Ian and Lan 11 arriving almost indiscriminately. Lin An's eyes narrowed, and he saw that the two women had a rainbow-like aura, rosy complexions, and a faint will lingering around them. It's Xuanhuan. Lin An suddenly looked happy. You too, actually. He, King Ian chuckled, with a rather cunning look, brother. How awesome are we? Lan 11 and I have both been promoted to the Divine Desolate. Lin An couldn't help but smile slightly, stepped forward and touched King Ian's head. Awesome, you two are simply amazing. Lan 11's beautiful eyes flashed with excitement. Now, including Lin An, we humans already have 3 gods. Lin An nodded happily, yes. The development of mankind is getting better and better among the 3 gods. Especially since this god is you, this makes me even more happy. Lan 11's eyes moved slightly, over there on the earth. Lin An smiled lightly, if this emperor comes forward, what else can't be solved? Wait for a few days, and the earth will be able to recover. Lan 11 breathed a sigh of relief, and then her beautiful eyes glowed again, isn't it right? Is there anything in this world that even you can't do? Lin An couldn't help but waved his hand, don't compliment me. I can't stand it. Lan 11 rolled her eyes, and then slightly pursed her seductive red lips. Lin, I think the sisters all have that starry sky pendant or something. They said you still have the starry sky rough stone. Lin An looked at her subconsciously, while Lan 11 blinked and lowered his head, as if he was a little embarrassed. Lin An couldn't help but laugh. What do I think is such a big deal? It scared me so much that I almost got goosebumps. Does this mean you should go out of your way to compliment me? Lan 11 suddenly felt even more embarrassed. Well, isn't this the first time I've spoken to you? It's inevitable that I'm a little uncomfortable. Lin An laughed and waved his hands. Okay, I know, this is easy to talk about, it's a small matter, considering that you have broken through the godly wilderness. Even if there is no raw stone, I will find a way to get you a large piece. Lan 11 smiled, and her foxy eyes showed some tenderness, so, I can take this opportunity to slaughter you. Lin An's eyelids jumped, slaughter me? With the status of this emperor, there are not many things that can be called slaughtering me. You look slim, but your appetite is not slim at all. Looking at Lin An's smile, Lan 11 didn't know that Lin An was teasing her, and immediately pounced on Lin An. Time is like water, and many years have passed in the blink of an eye. Above the Zhu domain, in Lin An's residence, at this moment, a ball of light is quietly floating in the center of the bedroom. There was no sign of life coming out, but there was a mysterious wave transmitted, and there was also a staggered light that was distorted to the extreme flowing out from the light ball.